The air was thick with a silence so profound it seemed almost tangible. The moon, a mere sliver, hid behind a veil of clouds, casting shadows that seemed to dance and whisper secrets of the unseen. I was alone, the solitude of the house a constant, echoing reminder of my isolation. The tales of the Wendigo, a creature of legend and nightmare, had been whispered through the generations. A harbinger of death, it was said to roam the dense woods, driven by an insatiable hunger for human flesh. I had always dismissed these tales as mere folklore, stories meant to instill fear and obedience in children. But that night, the shadows seemed to hold a sinister intent, and the air was charged with an unseen menace. A sudden rustle outside broke the oppressive silence. I strained my ears, my breath held, my heart pounding in my chest. I cautiously approached the window, peering into the darkness. My blood ran cold as I saw a figure, tall and emaciated, standing at the edge of the woods. Its eyes, glowing an unnatural crimson red, were fixed on me, and a chill of pure terror gripped my soul. The creature was a skeletal figure, its pale, leathery skin stretched tight over protruding bones. It moved with a predatory grace, its steps utterly silent, its penetrating gaze never leaving mine. Its claws, long, jagged, and yellow, were stained with a dark, viscous substance that looked nauseatingly like old blood, and its mouth was a gaping maw filled with rows of razor-sharp, yellowed teeth. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. The legend spoke of the Wendigo's ability to mimic human voices, to lure its prey into its deadly embrace. I listened intently, every fiber of my being on high alert, waiting for any sound, any indication of its presence. The silence was deafening, the tension palpable. I barricaded myself in my room, pushing heavy furniture against the door with trembling, sweat-slicked hands. The air was stifling, the presence of the creature a tangible weight on my chest. I clutched a makeshift weapon, a heavy flashlight, in my white-knuckled grip, my eyes fixed on the door, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. The hours dragged on at an agonizing pace, the tension in the air almost unbearable. The Wendigo remained outside, its silhouette a constant, menacing presence. I could see its shadow through the curtains, tall and misshapen, motionless. It seemed to be toying with me, savoring my fear, feeding off my escalating terror. I could hear its raspy, wet breaths, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it would strike. As the first rays of the sun pierced the horizon, the creature let out a scream so chilling it seemed to freeze my very soul. It was an anguished, inhuman wail that reverberated through my mind. The Wendigo retreated into the shadows, its twisted form melting into the darkness. I remained frozen, my body numb, my mind a whirlwind of fear and tentative relief. The Wendigo had gone with the dawn, but its presence lingered, a dark shadow over my soul. The legends were true, and I had come face to face with the embodiment of consummate evil. The experience had left me scarred, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked in the unseen, waiting to consume the unwary. I now live in constant fear, the memories of that night haunting my every waking moment. The Wendigo is out there, a specter in the night, and I know it will return. Its seething hunger unquenched, its malevolence undiminished. And I will be waiting, a lone sentinel in the darkness, ready to face the nightmare once more. The sun was sinking below the red rock cliffs as I pulled myself up the final stretch of the climb. I was almost to the summit, eager to take in the view after the grueling ascent. The last rays of light illuminated the sandstone walls around me in a fiery glow. I reached up for a handhold, my muscles burning with exertion, and hoisted myself onto the flat top of the mesa. I sat catching my breath, chest heaving from the strenuous climb. The panoramic vista spread out before me was breathtaking as I turned to take it all in. The sky was ablaze in brilliant hues of orange and pink, with streaks of purple beginning to creep in as dusk fell upon the desert. In the distance, the rugged landscape stretched out endlessly, the scrubby sagebrush plain meeting the soaring crimson cliffs that bled into the horizon in a gradient of color. This barren, primeval place felt untouched by man, a hidden world frozen in time far from civilization. I stood admiring the wild beauty of the scene surrounding me in solitude. The only sound was the soft breeze whistling through the desolate canyons and cliffs. As I gazed out, a bone-chilling shriek suddenly split the silence. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight up, and a shiver shot down my spine at the piercing cry. The unearthly wail echoed off the rock faces surrounding me, reverberating through the empty landscape. It sounded almost human in its distinct articulation, but far more primal and feral. Panic rose in my chest as I frantically scanned the rocks, searching for the source of the shriek, fading into ominous laughter. My eyes fixed on a hulking figure that appeared atop a nearby mesa, silhouetted black against the darkening, blood-red sky. It was crouched low on all fours, an unnatural posture, staring at me from the distance, too far away to make out anything except its broad, hunched outline. A sense of dread washed over me, raising goosebumps on my arms. Every animal instinct told me this was something dangerous, something inhuman lurking in the growing shadows. Before I could react, the creature sprang from its perch with terrifying speed, bounding effortlessly across the divide separating the two mesas. It closed the impossible distance in the blink of an eye with eerie agility, moving faster than any natural beast. As the monstrous figure rapidly drew nearer, I could see in the fading light its emaciated frame covered in matted, coal-black fur. It raised its head, eyes glowing like hot embers in a face that was almost human but horribly distorted, twisted, and shriveled by starvation. Rows of jagged teeth glinted from its gaping jaws, salivating at the prospect of prey. An icy fear coursed through my veins like freezing water. This was no ordinary animal stalking the cliffs, but something far more sinister. A malicious spirit taking physical form. An ancient evil born of Navajo legend. A skinwalker. Its burning gaze was locked on me, full of predatory hunger and otherworldly menace as it crept closer, blocking my only path down. I was trapped alone on the mesa top with this supernatural horror rapidly advancing on me. Moving with disturbing quickness and silence, unbound by natural law, the skinwalker closed the gap, focused solely on me. In the grip of terror, I desperately scanned the terrain behind me for any means of escape from the approaching demon. Spying a thin split in the rock wall, I bolted for the narrow crevice without hesitation, my only chance of survival. I squeezed inside just as the skinwalker pounced with claws outstretched, missing me by inches. The rock walls pressed in oppressively as I frantically clawed my way up the sheer, restrictive shaft, the claws scraping the rock below, sending sparks into the air. Unearthly screams of rage echoed through the passage, spurring me upwards. Lactic acid burned through my muscles, but I could not stop. At last I emerged onto the higher mesa and dashed blindly into the falling night without looking back. The distant glow of city lights on the horizon were my only guide as I ran headlong through the darkness. The nightmarish shrieks eventually faded behind me, but I did not slow my pace. Terror fueled my flight across the desert. By some miracle, I had escaped the clutches of the cursed skinwalker in that desolate place where ancient spirits still roam. I staggered into the outskirts of the small town near exhaustion, my legs feeling like rubber. Only then did I dare to rest, the comforting lights of the buildings chasing away the primal darkness. I was returned to the realm of man, far from where the skinwalker hunts. The demonic encounter would haunt my dreams forevermore, but I had survived. I escaped through wits and fear from the thing that should not be, yet persists between worlds. The full moon hovered like a spectral orb in the inky desert sky, casting its bone-white glow over the empty landscape. I sat by the flickering campfire, wary eyes continuously scanning the vast darkness surrounding me, senses straining for any sign of the sinister entity I knew lurked somewhere in the shadows just beyond the feeble ring of firelight. According to ancient Navajo legend, The Yai Nal Lusha, or Skinwalker, was a malevolent shapeshifter. A wraith-like creature of the night, capable of morphing into any animal on a whim. Spine-chilling tales of its preternatural speed, animalistic agility, primal bloodlust, and penchant for mimicry were whispered through generations in hushed, fearful tones. As an outsider and academic, I had always dismissed such stories as folklore used by elders to frighten children into obedience. But tonight, completely alone beneath the vast expanse of coldly glittering New Mexico stars, the presence of an ancient evil lurking in the darkness felt tangibly, terrifyingly real. I glanced down briefly at the thick anthropology textbook lying forgotten beside me, the chapter on Navajo oral traditions I had been reading now seeming absurdly inadequate. With a slight shiver running down my spine that had little to do with the chill night air, I added another dry juniper branch to the crackling campfire, seeking comfort and security in the flame's warmth and flickering light. I couldn't seem to shake the steadily creeping, prickling sensation of being watched or tracked from somewhere in the impenetrable darkness beyond my small oasis of light. The old legends spoke of the Skinwalker's ability to perfectly mimic familiar human voices in order to lure unwary victims outside tribal boundaries and into its waiting clutches. Straining my ears against the gently stirring night breeze, I listened intently for any unexpected or anomalous sound piercing the typical nocturnal desert ambiance, anything that might indicate a dark presence lurking nearby. From somewhere in the shadows sounded a rasping whisper, so faint it was nearly imperceptible at first. "Help me." The voice was female, weak and trembling, hauntingly human in tone and cadence. Every muscle in my body instantly tensed. I silently cursed myself for not driving back to town when I'd had the chance. Gripping my heavy flashlight in whitened knuckles, I slowly stepped beyond the flickering firelight, scanning the inky blackness around me and calling out in as steady a voice as I could muster. "Hello, is someone there? Do you need help?" Only the whispers of the wind through creosote bushes answered my anxious query. Along with the rapid pounding of my own heart, the powerful beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but moon-bleached sand and scattered desert scrub. I was utterly alone. Surely it must have just been the desert wind playing tricks. I tried to reassure myself, but something about that rasping voice had seemed far too real. A sudden blur of movement in my periphery made me whirl around in alarm. I glimpsed the glowing eyes and sandy coat of a coyote regarding me with an unsettling intensity completely unlike any wild animal before it vanished silently into the surrounding blackness. The encounter left my blood running cold. Its gaze had held an almost preternatural focus and keen awareness, more akin to human intelligence than animal instinct. A primal instinct buried deep in my lizard brain screamed that this was no ordinary desert coyote. Now thoroughly unnerved, I quickly retreated back to the fire's flickering circle of light and comforting warmth. But I couldn't seem to shake the steadily creeping sensation that something was still out there, just out of sight, stealthily watching me, patiently waiting. The old legends whispered through my mind, recounting the many forms the Skinwalker could assume to easily lure the unwary to their gruesome fates. I glanced frequently over my shoulder, peering anxiously into the darkness, pressing in on all sides. The scattered brush and scrub brush encircling my camp seemed to rustle and steadily close in with unnatural intent. Some malevolent presence clearly stalked me just beyond the boundaries of shadow and light. Apprehension and paranoia steadily congealed into dread-fueled certainty. This had to be the work of the Skinwalker. My escalating fears were soon confirmed. Without warning, a chorus of blood-freezing snarls erupted from multiple points in the darkness. The vocalizations sounded guttural and ravenous, seeming to come from both man and beast all around me, where seconds before the coyote had stood just within the campfire's dying glow, emerged an altogether different apparition. A hulking, unnaturally tall figure with claw-tipped hands and eyes burning with ancient malice and a soul-piercing intelligence no animal could possess. The old Navajo legends were terrifyingly real. I was now truly face-to-face with the living, breathing embodiment of mortal dread and superstition. The skinwalker opened its salivating, fang-lined maw wide and unleashed an unearthly, keening scream that seemed to pierce my psyche to its core. Time itself seemed to slow to a crawl as the hideous sound lanced through my mind, igniting every last primal survival instinct. That single cry conveyed a depth of timeless malevolence and depravity far beyond human reckoning. At last, some semblance of survival instinct broke through the all-consuming paralysis of terror. Whirling around, I sprinted headlong into the darkness without looking back, powered solely by adrenaline and the primal human drive to survive. The monster's enraged, inhuman wails pursued close behind my panicked flight as it rapidly gained ground. I pushed my body to its absolute limits. Lungs screaming for air, legs burning with lactic acid. The small, distant glow of artificial lights from some unknown town appeared over the moonlit horizon as a beacon of hoped salvation. Only when I finally collapsed, near exhaustion beneath the blessed radiance of the first street lamp, did I dare to believe I had somehow managed to escape the skinwalker's clutches. As I lay panting and trembling on the sidewalk, the nightmarish events replayed in my mind on loop. The scholars had been right. There were some legends that refused to be dismissed as mere folklore or superstition. This evil entity had existed alongside humanity for untold generations before I stumbled blindly into its domain. But my encounter with the legend was not over. I knew now, deep in the primal recesses of my being, that the skinwalker was still patiently out there waiting for me, lurking in the shadows just beyond the light. The forest was dense, a sprawling tapestry of ancient trees and tangled underbrush. Each step I took was deliberate, the crunch of fallen leaves and twigs beneath my boots echoing in the stillness. My mission was simple: gather firewood before nightfall. But as the sun's golden rays began to wane, casting elongated shadows that danced and flickered, an unsettling feeling settled in my chest. I had heard the tales, whispered around campfires and passed down through generations. Stories of skinwalkers, elusive creatures that roamed the woods, shifting their forms and preying on unsuspecting souls. I had always dismissed them as mere folklore, tales to scare children. But today, the atmosphere was different, charged with an electric tension that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. As I ventured deeper, the trees seemed to close in around me, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The once familiar sounds of the forest, the chirping of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, were now replaced by an eerie silence. Only the rhythmic thud of my heartbeat filled my ears. Suddenly, a soft rustling broke the quietude. I froze, straining my ears, trying to pinpoint the source. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, like the soft whisper of fabric against skin. I turned slowly, scanning the dimming woods, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Shaking off the unease, I resumed my search, gathering twigs and branches. As I bent to pick up a particularly gnarled piece of wood, a chilling howl pierced the air. It was neither wolf nor coyote, but something far more sinister, a sound that seemed to resonate from another realm. My heart raced, and a cold sweat broke out on my brow. I clutched the firewood tightly, my eyes darting in every direction, and then I saw it. A figure, not quite human, not quite animal, stood at the edge of the clearing. Its eyes, a deep shade of amber, glinted with malevolence. Its form was fluid, constantly shifting, as if it couldn't decide what creature it wanted to be. I stumbled backward, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The skinwalker, for I had no doubt that's what it was, began to move toward me. Each step it took was deliberate, a predator stalking its prey. The world around me seemed to blur, my focus solely on the creature before me. Summoning every ounce of courage, I hurled a piece of firewood at it. The log passed right through the entity, as if it were made of smoke. The skinwalker let out a guttural laugh, a sound that chilled me to my core. Desperation fueled my legs, and I ran. Branches whipped at my face, and roots threatened to trip me. But I didn't dare slow down. The creature's haunting laughter echoed in my ears, spurring me on. Just when I thought my lungs would burst, I burst into a clearing bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The skinwalker's presence faded, its malevolent energy no match for the sanctity of the light. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my camp. As I collapsed, exhausted and shaken, I realized the forest had forever changed for me. The tales were real, and I had come face to face with one of its darkest legends. That night, as I sat by the roaring fire, every crackle and pop made me jump. The woods were no longer just trees and animals. They were alive with mysteries and ancient beings. And though I had escaped the clutches of the skinwalker, its haunting visage would forever be etched in my memory. A grim reminder of the unknown lurking just beyond the veil of reality.